Hi Quilters, I'm Shelley Robson at the Quilted Forest, and we are doing our 2024 recap to check in and see how I did on my projects of the month. So first off, we have the quilt for December. I had chosen this project. It was the last one, of course, and I am glad to say that it is done, finished, accomplished, quilted, and bound. This started out as a quilt top, and all four edges were jagged. So the top, the bottom, and both sides. So what I did for this one was just take it apart, put it back together, quilt it, and bind it.
While interesting and beautiful, there was no way I wanted to try to bind this odd-shaped quilt top with no flat edges. I imagine it's one of the reasons why it was never finished by the original owner. I decided to remove the bumps on one end and insert the cut-off pieces onto the other end. I sewed them in by machine, and I didn't worry about being perfect because there were plenty of other not perfectly pieced areas of this quilt. Once that was accomplished, I had two flat edges and two sides with peaks and valleys that I knew how to handle for binding. I made sure to cut off all the loose threads from the wrong side of the quilt top to prevent them from showing through to the front. I used a cotton batting and machine quilted this on my long arm quilting machine. I used an eggshell colored thread and a small stipple or meander pattern. While it was on the quilting frame, I took some time to admire all of the hand-pieced seams. Once it was quilted, I carefully trimmed the edge. To make the binding, I just did a regular binding, not a bias binding, and I picked a 30s reproduction fabric for both the binding and the backing. For binding this kind of an edge, the points are treated like the corners of a quilt. The valleys are straightened out by folding the quilt so you have a flat, straight edge to sew the binding onto. It can be a little tricky, so I took my time and didn't rush the process. I could have added fabric or cut the quilt top to make flat edges all around, but I'm glad I left the two sides with the peaks and valleys. As I was quilting it, I did find a few holes I hadn't found before putting it on the frame. I reinforced the hole underneath it with some muslin so you wouldn't be able to see all the way through.
I'm very excited to put this on the done pile. I had to take a few days off from some other things I should have been working on in December and just have a little fun sewing and work some stress off and put another quilt on the done pile. My final tally at the end of 2024 is that I have 6 empty buckets. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of the 6 remaining buckets, the one I have half a quilt left out of it because I used the first half of the blocks on that quilt. So that's half a box. On the remaining 5, I have 3 that I've actually done projects with, kind of worked on them a little bit. I've made some good progress on those projects. There's only 2 that I didn't make any progress at all. I took them out of the box a couple times and looked at them, but that is as far as they got. So I am pretty proud that only 2 of the boxes had 0 progress. I'm going to call that a major win for 2024. The other thing I worked on in 2024 was my Splendid Sampler II blocks. And with these 3 final blocks that I worked on, I have all 100 blocks done. So very excited about that. But the 3 that I finished in December were the Lots of Hexies block by Yvonne Bustegger, the Blue Ribbon block by Melissa Mortensen, and the last block I worked on was Grand's Legacy by Nikki Turbo. So that one was a lot of embroidery, and I'm not really good at that, but it was kind of fun to be working on the final block. So just so I can show you that I actually worked on all these blocks, I'm going to show you how I've been keeping track of them. I have these binders that have these pages in them, and as I finish a block, I would add it into the notebook. So I have that one. I have this one that has more blocks, and it was fun to keep track of them this way, and I could look back and see what kind of colors I'd used and which ones I'd made. And the last notebook with all of these, it's going to be fun when I finally get this quilt done and I have these notebooks I can use for something else. So that will be exciting too. But all 100 of the blocks are done. So maybe next year you'll see this again in one of my buckets so I can actually put them together into a finished quilt. A lot of you have been asking if we're going to do this again in 2025, and the answer is of course. We have a lot of projects we want to accomplish yet. So I'm going to take these buckets down, put the ones I haven't finished into bags, and either put them back in a different bucket to try again next year, or set them aside for extra projects for next year. And I'm going to come up with 12 new things to fill up my buckets. So give some thought to what you might want to do in 2025 to play along. So if you haven't finished all your 2024 projects or even your 2023 projects, think about if you want to put them back in the buckets or if you want to work on all new kinds of projects. So some people have asked, does it have to be quilting projects? Absolutely not. It doesn't have to be quilting projects. It can be any kind of thing you want. It could be knitting, crocheting, any kind of hobby that you have, home improvement project. It can be any kind of project you want, anything at all. All you need to do is make a list and write down the 12 projects that you want to get accomplished. So I like to have them in buckets so that I have them numbered. I can keep track of them. They're all in one place. But you can just have a list, and if you know where your projects are, you can just find them when it comes time to work on that particular project. So think about your list for 2025, get it all put together. Be on the lookout for a video in a day or two for our Project of the Month 2025 kickoff. I'll share with you my list of projects I want to get done in 2025, and we'll pull the first number so that you know what to work on in January. Thanks for watching, and happy quilting! Really?
Okay, go.
Now you're being silly.